It was a typical day in the courtroom until one man's shocking outburst changed everything. As the trial proceeded, the defendant, visibly frustrated, turned to the bench and unleashed a barrage of racist insults at the presiding judge, who happened to be an accomplished black woman. The courtroom fell silent, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone was left wondering, how would the judge respond? Would she react with anger, disappointment, or something no one expected? What happened next not only left the defendant stunned, but completely floored everyone in the room. In this moment, the power dynamics of the courtroom shifted in ways no one saw coming. This judge's next move would turn the entire situation upside down, making it clear that sometimes the strongest response isn't what people think. Stick around to find out what happened next in this jaw-dropping moment of justice. The tension in the room grew heavier as the judge sat quietly for a moment, her expression unreadable. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath, waiting to see what she would do next. The defendant, still simmering with anger, had no idea that his words had just sparked something far bigger than he realized. You could almost feel the eyes of the jury shifting uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how to process the blatant disrespect that had just unfolded before them. The bailiffs stood ready, their hands hovering near their radios, but the judge hadn't signaled for anyone to intervene. What many didn't know was that this judge had faced adversity like this before. She wasn't new to the challenges of navigating a system where respect isn't always given. But today, something felt different. The insult hung in the air, lingering, as if daring the judge to respond. Everyone was on edge, waiting for her next move. As the silence stretched on, the defendant began to shift nervously. His bravado from moments earlier seemed to fade, replaced by uncertainty. He had expected a swift reaction, maybe even an outburst from the judge, but instead, there was nothing. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, with everyone, from the jury to the spectators, glued to the judge's every move. Meanwhile, the attorneys exchanged wary glances, unsure of how to proceed. The prosecutor, who had been delivering a powerful argument before the interruption, now struggled to keep his composure. Was this going to derail the entire trial? The defense lawyer looked just as uncertain, perhaps realizing that his client's outburst might have just jeopardized their case. The judge finally leaned forward slightly, her calm demeanor betraying none of the emotions that might have been brewing beneath the surface. But what no one could guess was that this moment would set off a chain of events that would leave everyone speechless. The judge finally broke the silence, but instead of addressing the defendant's insults, she spoke calmly, directing her gaze toward the jury. Her voice, steady and composed, began to recount the principles of justice, equality, and respect that the courtroom was built on. It wasn't the response anyone had anticipated. The defendant, visibly thrown off, fidgeted in his seat, as if unsure whether he should interrupt again or stay silent. The audience leaned in, hanging on her every word, sensing that something bigger was unfolding before their eyes. As she continued, the judge subtly hinted at the weight of the position she held, not just as a judge, but as a black woman in a system where respect was often hard-earned, not freely given. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It had transformed into a battleground for dignity. Every word felt deliberate, calculated. Tension swirled in the air as everyone waited for the moment when the judge would finally turn her attention to the defendant. They could feel it coming, but no one could predict how she would respond. What would she do next? Just when it seemed like the judge was about to address the defendant directly, she paused, her eyes scanning the courtroom. Then, in a move that no one saw coming, she turned her focus to the defense attorney. Her voice, still calm but now with a sharper edge, questioned how such behavior had been allowed to unfold without any intervention from the defendant's legal counsel. The attorney, caught completely off guard, stammered, unsure how to respond. The room, already tense, seemed to tighten even further. This was not just about the defendant anymore. Suddenly, the defense attorney's professionalism and role in the courtroom were being called into question. The stakes had been raised, and everyone could feel it. The jury exchanged nervous glances, realizing they were now watching something far more complex than a standard trial. The defendant, too, looked shaken, realizing that he wasn't just facing a judge's wrath, but that his own lawyer had become a part of the conflict. With this unexpected twist, the entire atmosphere shifted. Everyone was on edge, waiting to see how this confrontation would play out. Would the judge's next move resolve the chaos or push the conflict to an even more intense breaking point? The courtroom waited, the air thick with anticipation. The judge took a deep breath and at last turned to the defendant. Her calm composure remained, but her words carried the weight of the moment. She acknowledged the pain behind the insults, pointing out that such behavior wasn't just an attack on her, but on the justice system itself. The defendant, now visibly uncomfortable, seemed to shrink under the gravity of her words. Then came the unexpected twist. Instead of issuing a harsh sentence or delivering a scathing rebuke, the judge did something no one expected. She offered the defendant a chance for redemption. With a steady voice, she proposed a community service program aimed at helping marginalized groups, emphasizing the importance of understanding the struggles of others. The courtroom was stunned. No one saw this coming, least of all the defendant, who had been bracing for punishment. The final twist. The defense attorney, still reeling from the judge's earlier remarks, stepped forward and apologized on behalf of his client, accepting the proposal without hesitation. It was a moment of humility that no one had predicted, and the room let out a collective breath as the tension finally broke. The judge's unexpected act of grace left the courtroom in awe, proving that sometimes the most powerful response is one that heals rather than condemns. As the courtroom slowly emptied, a sense of calm replaced the earlier tension. The defendant, though still processing the judge's unexpected kindness, appeared humbled by the experience. His outburst, once fueled by anger and frustration, had led to an outcome no one anticipated, a chance for reflection and growth. The defense attorney, having learned a valuable lesson about standing up for what's right, walked quietly beside his client, the weight of the day's events lingering in his mind. The judge, having shown both strength and compassion, returned to her chambers with a deep sense of purpose. Her decision had not only diffused a volatile situation, but had also set a powerful example for everyone in the room. It was a reminder that justice, when wielded with wisdom, has the power to heal rather than divide. As the courtroom door closed behind them, one thing was clear. This case would be remembered not for the insults, but for the unexpected grace that followed.